Welcome back to science class. The next portion we can study about sexual reproduction in plants. We already studied reproduction in plants of two types, that is asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. We studied about vegetative propagation, budding, fragmentation, spore formation, etc. So the next one is about sexual reproduction. How it is possible in plants, that is the main reproductory part of the plant is a flower. Therefore, by looking at the flower itself, you have to understand whether that flower is bisexual flower or unisexual flower. Here, the main reproductive part of the flower is stamen, and the female reproductive part of the flower is pistil. Here it is a pistil. And if a plant contains both, that is a plant not flower, flower contain both stamen and pistil, then that flower is known as bisexual flower. If the flower contains either stamen or pistil, then it is unisexual flower. Example of bisexual flower, we can say that rose, mustard, etc. And for the unisexual flower, corn, papaya, cucumber, etc. And we can study details about stamen and pistil. Here we can see stamen. If you want to see the stamen, you can take mandara. In your home, sometimes there is mandara. You can look into that. Here, stamen consists of anther, top anther, and a tube-like structure filament. This anther consists of pollens. Poombody, pollens is there. And here, the female reproductive part is known as pistil. Pistil consists of, you can look China rose, that is hibiscus flower, you can see clearly about the stigma. Top portion is known as stigma, and this part is known as style, and a covering part is known as ovary, and inside it is ovule. And this ovary forms the, when it becomes fruit, ovary forms the fruit, and ovule forms the seed, inside the seed. The mango, that ovary forms that flesh part, and inside the seed forms that ovule. So this about stamen and pistil. So I think all of you understand about what is a unisexual flower and a bisexual flower. The next we can study about pollination. How pollination occurring in plant, and self-pollination and cross-pollination. So we can study about the pollination. Before that, we have to understand about what is happening inside the anther and what is happening inside the stigma. So inside the anther there is pollens, and inside the stigma style and the ovary is there, inside the ovule is there. So anther, inside the anther pollens are there, they are known as male gametes, and inside the ovule is a female gametes is there. So fusion of male gametes and female gametes forms zygote and do different offspring, and this zygote grow into different offspring, new individual from the parent plant. And for the formation of the zygote, what is happening, just for this pollen have to reach the stigma. That is, the transfer of pollens from anther to the stigma is known as pollination. For a flower, the pollen should be transferred from anther to the stigma by the help of insects, by the help of wind, by the help of some animals, by the help of some human beings also it can be possible. So the transfer of pollens from the anther to the stigma is known as pollination. When it reaches together, this anther, this pollens together, that is from the anther, male gametes reach the ovule, they will form together the zygote. Zygote formation is occurring there inside. So then we have to understand this pollination is divided into two, that is self-pollination and cross-pollination. Sometimes in plants it contains both female and male reproductive organs. Then self-pollination will occur there. Anther of the same plant to the stigma of the same plant it will transfer. It is known as self-pollination. Then from that you can understand what is cross-pollination. Sometimes the transfer of pollens from one plant, anther of the one plant to the stigma of the different plant of same kind is known as cross-pollination. So you must understand the difference between self-pollination and cross-pollination. So once more I will say, the transfer of pollen from anther of the same plant to the stigma of the same plant is known as self-pollination. Next one, cross-pollination, that is the transfer of Pollens from anther of one plant to the stigma of the another plant of same kind is known as cross-pollination. And how it is possible? That you have to study in the seed dispersal. Another topic is there, that is how it is possible, that is seed is transferring from one place to another place. You can see sometimes coconut is passing through a river, it will reach some other place and it will grow from there. By the help of us, that is when we pass through some grass seeds will attach to our dress, it will stick to our dress. And so that kind of another seed dispersal. When wind is coming, some these seeds will disperse through the air, and through the animals also seed can be dispersed. So there are different kinds of seed dispersal. So you must read that topic and before coming to the live session. And thank you for listening to the class.
It is spring season. Flowers are blooming on the trees. It is indeed a beautiful sight. Flowers attract all of us. They are the most beautiful part of the plant, isn't it? You already know that flowers are not present only to add beauty to the plant. They are in fact the reproductive part of the plant. In the flower, stamen is the male reproductive part, while carpel is the female reproductive part. Some flowers contain both male and female reproductive parts. Such flowers are called bisexual flowers. For example, pea, China rose, etc. On the other hand, some flowers possess either the male or the female reproductive parts. Such flowers are called unisexual flowers. For example, corn, cucumber, etc. Now let us know about the different parts that make up a stamen and a carpel. A stamen is made of two main parts, anther and filament. The anther produces pollen grains. It is the pollen grain that contains the male gametes. A carpel, on the other hand, is made up of three parts. The terminal part is called the stigma. The middle elongated part is the style, and the swollen bottom part is the ovary. Inside the ovary, ovules are present. It is the ovule that has the female gamete called the egg cell. For sexual reproduction to take place, a male gamete is to be fused with the female gamete, thereby forming a zygote. Now for that, the male gametes have to reach the female gametes. For this, first a pollen grain carrying the male gametes is transferred from the stamen of a flower to the stigma of the same or the other flower. Such transfer of pollen grains is known as pollination. If the pollen grain of a flower lands on the stigma of the same flower, it is called self-pollination. But if the pollen grain of a flower lands on the stigma of another flower of the same or another plant of the same type, it is called cross-pollination. Pollination occurs with the help of different agents like wind, water, or animals. Once a pollen grain reaches the stigma of a suitable flower, a tube grows from the pollen grain. This tube travels through the style and reaches the ovary. The male gamete from the pollen travels in this tube and reaches to the female gamete present in the ovule of the ovary. After that, the male and the female gamete fuse together to form the zygote. This process of fusion of male and female gametes is called fertilization. The zygote formed after the fertilization then divides several times to form an embryo inside the ovule. The ovule develops a tough coat and changes to a seed.